everyone, and welcome to today's call with Congressman Cliff Bentz. During today's event, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. So to ask a question, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad. That'll take you right into the question queue. And during this call, you can get signed up for the Congressman's e-newsletter by pressing star 6. Again, please press star 3 to ask a question, star 6 to subscribe to the newsletter. With that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Bentz. Congressman, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining me this evening. I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I'm very happy to have this opportunity to speak with folks back in my district and to take your questions. I just want to say a few words about what a difference 7 or 8 months makes, and just draw people's attention to some of the many things that have happened over the past 7 or 8 months. First of all, we've had an astoundingly successful change on our southern border. We've gone from seeing a couple of 100,000, if not 250,000 people a month coming across the border about a year ago, and now we're down to 5 to 7 to 8 to 10,000 a day, if not fewer. And so it's an incredible change, which sadly many folks have been ignoring, but it means a great deal to the United States. I think at one time we were running numbers on what it was going to cost America for each one of the people that came across illegally, and that number was around $9,000 a year. So you can imagine how much that adds up to if you have 250,000 people coming across a month. Well, that's not happening anymore. And of course, we've turned our attention, we Republicans and the President, to making sure that we have enough oil and gas to keep prices low. And as I was going to check today, but I believe that they're lower in most states than they've been for many years. It's not true in Oregon because, unfortunately, the Oregon legislature, where I was for 12 years, has decided to impose clean fuel standards that are driving up the cost of fuel. And so it's not surprising to see that the cost of fuel in Oregon is still something like $1 to $1.50 higher than in other states across the nation. Of course, the big beautiful bill, we're referring to it now more frequently as either the big bill or the working family tax cut, but it's the big bill that we passed a couple of months ago, and it contains a number of absolutely essential extensions of tax law, among many, many, many other things. If there's one thing bad about the bill, is that it's got so much in it, and there are literally hundreds of provisions. And some of them, which I want to just mention, we of course put in something like $12.5 billion to help our air traffic control, something you probably hadn't heard about. We put in some additional disaster relief funding for farmers and ranchers. We've put in rescissions of certain parts of the green gas issues that were greenhouse gas issues that were in the previous laws passed by the Biden administration. We've put in provisions now that help students to get Pell Grants if they're going to go into the trades, which is an extremely important thing, and I'm very happy to have been a supporter of that. Of course, we know that simply relying upon the border to stay secure is not enough. We've put in $175 billion for border security. There's going to be an additional 701 miles of wall built, 900 miles of river barriers. We'll be funding ICE and immigration agency operations. Now that the border is secure, we plan on keeping it that way. We also have $150 billion that we put in to modernize our military. And this is extraordinarily important given the fact that I hate to bring it to everybody's attention again, but September 11th is just a few days away, back in 2021 when we were attacked. And we cannot forget how incredibly challenging our situation in the world still is. And I want to give great credit to President Trump for having the thoughtfulness and courage to order a strike on Iran, which we think has dramatically set back the nuclear program that nation has been working on for many years. And so we're happy that he finally took action and hopefully has put that horrible, dangerous situation aside, at least for the time being. I want to point out that the Snake River dams, the 4 lower Snake River dams, are not any longer in danger of being breached, which most assuredly was the goal of the Biden administration. I had a number of hearings on that as chair of the Water Subcommittee of Natural Resources, and I can tell you that those dams are absolutely essential to our grid and to the energy generation in the Northwest. And so I'm very happy that, given the danger they truly were in under the Biden administration, we're now under the Trump administration reversing that. We are now getting back into our forests again under the Working Family Tax Cut bill. There are provisions that require an increase in the amount of timber harvested from our federal lands. This is extraordinarily important, of course, because it will result in reduced fuel in the woods, reducing the damage that wildfires do. But more importantly, it's going to help sawmills and people that are trying to still make a living in the woods stay in business. And I worked closely with Chair Westerman on the Natural Resource Committee. He's the brains behind the design of that, which went into the Working Family Tax Cut, big beautiful bill. It's a very, very, very good thing for Oregon. There's some talk about how some of that timber, when removed, the money generated that's paid to the government won't go to counties. That's not true. A significant portion still goes to counties. There's just one aspect of the big bill that, because of the way that the bill is passed under reconciliation, the money that's generated by certain parts of that new wood coming off the forests will go instead to just the U.S. Treasury. But the thought was, and I've talked to Bruce Westerman about this at length, that it's better to get wood out of the forest. It's better to have jobs and sawmills staying around than not, which would have been the case if we had tried to force the money to come to counties. Because had we done that, those provisions would have been taken out of the bill by the Senate parliamentarian. Fires, I'm happy to report that we've gone. My team and I have visited Forest Service offices around my district, asking first of all if they had enough people fighting fire, and I'm happy to say that we actually have a few more fighting fire this year than last, and we've been assured by the Forest Service that they have the assets necessary to fight fires. And to that end, we've noticed a dramatic increase in the speed at which the Forest Service has been mounting initial attacks on fire. This Working Family Tax Cut bill also actually included provisions that are going to slow down spending. They do it by getting rid of fraud, waste, and abuse, and I'm anticipating some questions that allow me to elaborate further on that. I'm happy to say that I was able to get a bill passed. It was actually signed into law by President Biden in January, but it addressed the Klamath, and it basically incorporated an agreement that had been made back in 2015, 2014, and that agreement was then the foundation for the Trump administration, Department of Interior, to determine that the water stored in Klamath Lake is available to the farmers and not for fish flows. And indeed, that was consistent, it is consistent with the original concept underlying stored water. So I'm very, very happy that my bill provided a foundation for that type of guidance on the Klamath River after all these years. There's shifting over to Medicaid for a moment. There's been much talk about Medicaid. Most of it incorrect, and most of it borderline what we call meta-scare tactics by Democrats. I think that is highly wrong, and that's because it scares people, and we shouldn't be scaring people when the approach that we're using when it comes to Medicaid is to preserve that extremely important program, while at the same time making sure that those who are using it are eligible for it. So we will be removing from that program those who are here illegally. They've never been legally allowed on the program, at least when it comes to federal dollars. And we will be removing people who are making too much money to be on the program. And we will be removing people who refuse to either work or volunteer or go to school for able-bodied folks who choose not to work. This is incredibly important. We have literally thousands and thousands of people who are enjoying basically free health care, but they're not working. And why should that be the case? These are people that are perfectly capable of working, they're able-bodied, and what we're basically saying is that if you want free health care, then for goodness sakes, work at least 20 hours a week, go to school for at least 20 hours a week, volunteer for at least 20 hours a week. To that end, in some of my meetings that I've held over the past couple of weeks, I've asked county commissioners to begin to put together lists of volunteer work that people can do so that people aren't wondering where they can look to get something that they could do to help a community. And other people should be doing the same thing and then going to their counties to say, hey, do you have a list? So that folks who are wondering where they can volunteer have a place to turn. I want to mention also our Secure Rural Schools bill. We have been successful in getting the PILT money, payment in lieu of taxes, to our counties this year, but the Secure Rural Schools money is still being held up, and what we're trying to do is get that included in the Farm Bill. We've had conversations as recently as just a couple of days ago regarding this, and we have high hopes that it's going to make its way through here in the last couple of months of Congress. Finally, I want to talk about small business. The backbone of my district is small business, and I am so happy that the Working Family Tax Cut, the Big Beautiful Bill, whatever we're going to call it, has in it the 20% qualified business income deduction, and it has support for pass-through entities like S-corps, LLCs, and partnerships. And of course, it has other provisions regarding depreciation, stuff that only your accountant could love, but you will too when you see the benefits that it brings to not just small business, but others. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and take your questions. And once again, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. And with that, let's go to our questions.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And a quick reminder for everybody, if you have a question you would like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. And also don't forget, the Congressman and his staff put out a very informative e-newsletter. You can get signed up during this call by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. And we start tonight with an online question from Richard, who writes, the eastern part of our state has much sun and open spaces, great conditions for generating solar electricity. In the face of the current favoring of fossil fuel power, can something be done to promote this resource for your district?
Well, thank you for the question. There's no doubt about the value of southern Eastern Oregon, and for that matter, most of Eastern Oregon, to those who want to generate solar power. In fact, when I was in the Oregon legislature, I assisted folks in putting together legislation that structured our property tax law in a way that was beneficial not only to the solar developer in Oregon, but also the counties within which those projects are located. And those tax arrangements have worked to the benefit of many counties in Eastern Oregon. And I must say that the big question for all of us right now, though, is can solar be successful without the federal tax credit? Because except for certain projects that are already about to be turned on, the new projects are going to have to be funded with private money because the tax credit is going to go away. And the good news is I think that solar has reached a point now where it's sufficiently inexpensive to be successful when there's no tax credit available to subsidize it. This is good news. I will tell you the bad news, however, and the bad news is that for any type of electrical generation, we don't have the transmission. And this is for, there are many reasons that we don't have enough wire to move this electricity around our districts, or around any place in Eastern Oregon for that matter, much of the Northwest. And that is because for many years, Bonneville Power Administration, that controls about 80 or 90% of the transmission in the Northwest, has not been, shall we say, expanding it. And in point of fact, there's probably a real question as to how much money the administration is going to need to rebuild much of our transmission. Much of it's really old. But the main problem we have now is you could have a solar farm, a great big one, but no way to get the power from the solar arrays to where it's going to have to be used. To this end, I'm happy to say that I am now on the committees that have the ability to weigh in on these issues, on transmission issues. I'm on Energy and Commerce, on the subcommittee on energy, and I'm on natural resources. I'm on the subcommittee on water, and both of those have something to say about Bonneville Power. But so your idea that we should have solar is a good one. We are adding more solar all the time. I think we'll continue to see that, but we need to be talking about transmission, and I'm working on that. And I've talked enough on this particular issue, so I'll stop, but I'm happy to share more details if you want to contact our office.
All right, let's go to the phones. Our caller is Keegan in Klamath Falls. Keegan, you are live with the Congressman. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hello, Congressman Bentz. Two things. I know you didn't mean anything by it. We were attacked on September 11th, 2001, not 2021. Secondarily, I would like to ask about House Resolution 4405, the Epstein File Transparency Act, introduced by Rep. Ro Khanna in California and seconded by Rep. Massey, who is a Republican from Kentucky. I was just wondering if you plan to sign on to that bill. I think it goes a long way in showing that you want to protect the children in this country and in Oregon's 2nd District. Just wondering your plans on that one.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for correcting me. You are absolutely right. Of course, it was 2001, and I have written down here 2021 and 2001 to figure out where I should, how many years have been passed. And I want to move to your question though about about Epstein. Let me first say that a monster like Epstein should never have been allowed to do what he did, ever. And nor those folks who joined him in his horrible activities. And you are absolutely right that we need to be doing something to try to figure out how in the world to make sure it doesn't happen again, and to hold those accountable who may not have been. We also need to find out why in the world he wasn't held accountable sooner. So there's a lot more to this than simply disclosing the documents. It happens that Congressman Massey is a good friend of mine. I served 4 years with him on the Judiciary Committee, and I have the highest respect for him. Unfortunately, his discharge petition does not have the reach, if you will, of an oversight investigation. So I have here in front of me a chart that compares James Comer's, who is Chairman Comer's, oversight investigation that's ongoing against the H.R. Res. 581, the discharge petition that you're talking about. I'll just share with you that, and I'm going to go through some of these things because this is a really important question, and I want it clear as a bell that I'm totally in favor of trying to figure out how to prevent this from happening and how to hold people accountable. So let me just start. The request that Resolution 581 makes, that was drafted by Congressman Massey, is for a similar scope of DOJ documents that Comer's Oversight Committee asked for, but Massey's discharge petition is not binding and does not have the force of law unless it's passed by the Senate and then signed by the President. we can go forward right now with Comer's oversight investigation without having to make it into a law. He has, Comer, the subpoena power that has the force of law and thus provides additional protection for the victims. The Comer investigation has requested all documents from Epstein estate. In fact, some of them were turned over today, related to Epstein and Maxwell, and the subpoena making that request has the force of law. That was not requested in the discharge petition by Massey. The oversight investigation by Comer issued 11 deposition subpoenas for testimony. That was not requested in Massey's petition. The Comer oversight investigation requested Epstein and Maxwell's bank records from the Treasury. This is extremely important. That was not requested in the Massey petition. The Comer oversight investigation received 34,000 pages from the DOJ, with much more forthcoming, and those were made public. No documents received or made public because of the Massey petition. Comer has taken one deposition. He will take more. That's not going to happen under the discharge petition. One interview has already been scheduled by Comer. That's not going to be scheduled under Resolution 581. And there are 3 written declarations confirmed pending, and no written declarations have been made or required because of the Resolution 581. What I want to make clear here is this. We want this to be a successful investigation, and we want to see everything. But we have to be super careful about a number of things. The first is, there are many, but I'll just mention one of the most important, and that is that we not damage the victims that have already been harmed. Why in the world would we throw stuff open so that something that happened years ago suddenly becomes public when that's been redacted? As a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. I used to try cases where little kids were involved, and what the judge would do is, rather than put the little kids on the witness stand and take them through that incredibly challenged circumstance, he or she, the judge, would take the child and the lawyers back into chambers and out of the view of everybody, and we would manage the situation carefully to protect the child. And that's what the Comer investigation will do. The Massey investigation does not afford those protections. It does not. And I've looked carefully at the language in it, and I can assure you that I'm right. So I'm sorry it takes so long on this, but it's super important that we get this right, and super important that we try to protect the people that were so grievously harmed, and also do our best to make sure it doesn't happen again. Next question.
All right, next up, we've got Beverly from Madras on the line with us. Beverly, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Congressman Bentz, thanks for taking my question. I'm a 90% disabled service-attached veteran, and my question is, what does this, I've heard that veteran benefits are cut in this, what's called BBB or whatever, I'm not sure. And also, is there anything in there that's helping homeless veterans? So,
first of all, there's no cuts to the Veterans Administration or to veterans in the big beautiful bill or the Working Family Tax Cut bill. We protect veterans because they deserve protection. I think I've quoted before that over the time I've been here, this is my 5th year, I voted over 120 times, I think, for veterans bills and against 4 or 5 of them. And the 4 or 5 I voted against is because the chairman of the Veterans Committee had asked that we oppose the bill, or whatever the measure may be. But over 100 times I voted for veterans because they deserve our support, every one of you. I want to thank you for your service. I also want to make it clear that the confusion that's been created by some of even my colleagues on the other side of the aisle over what's being included in the big bill and not is reprehensible. People should be talking honestly in a straightforward way about what this bill does, and it does not harm veterans. But again, thank you for your service. Thanks for the question.
Moving on, we've got Joyce in Klamath Falls joining us now. Hello, Joyce. You are live with Congressman Bentz. What's on your mind?
Hello, Congressman Bentz. My name is Joyce, and I'm a practicing physician and a medical educator. And I wanted to ask you about the effects of H.R. 1 on both Medicare and Medicaid, and how some of those potential effects on Medicaid might be leading to hitting our ability to train the next generation of physicians in our rural areas of Oregon. And I'm also curious, as a second part, to hear their thoughts on the rural health transformation funds coming out of that, and whether that could be used as a way to counteract these cuts.
Doctor, thanks for your question, and thanks for your service in Klamath Falls. I think you mean the great big bill. When you talk about H.R. 1, I think the number is actually a little different. But let me just mention that that the reductions that are in the bill are designed to remove from Medicaid those who are here illegally, and they're not legally allowed to be on Medicaid. The law existed that way before this bill came along. What I think people forget is that this bill is focused on making sure that the state of Oregon checks every 6 months to see if you're qualified to stay on Medicaid. And that review process is something that's supposed to have been in place for years, because we don't want people on these programs that aren't eligible. We can't afford it. It's an extremely important program to an awful lot of people. It's extremely expensive, and we need to make sure that we're directing those resources toward those who are eligible for them. The other group that's not shouldn't be on there but are people who are making more than the 138% of poverty level. And my numbers here may be off a bit, but if you're making more than what you're supposed to be making, you shouldn't be on Medicaid. The state of Oregon, for whatever reason, has decided not to check to see if the people were eligible, and for years, no one looked. And you can't do that and have these programs continue to serve those who need them so badly if you're busy paying bills for people who are not eligible for those benefits. On your question about doctors, you may be talking about the portion of the bill that has to do with education and what we're doing in the education space when it comes to student loans. And what I would say is we want more doctors. And the question, however, is how in the world do we make sure that the loan arrangements that we've been using work better? One of the problems that we've had, and it predates my getting to Congress, is colleges or universities, perhaps even medical schools, not paying any attention to the poor person that's going to have to pay the loans back. And so what we did in this bill is we basically said, look, there's going to be some skin in the game from these schools, that if they're going to shovel money out the door, federal money, out the door for loans, and then the person who is borrowing the money and charged with paying it back can't get a job or is not being educated to ever get a job, then the school is going to be responsible for part of the payback. And so what we're trying to do is say, look, schools, you're going to have to be more careful in who you shovel the money out the door to, who you extend credit to, because if you are giving it to the folks that are never going to get a job for whatever degree they're getting, then the school is going to have to basically give part of that money back by helping offset those loans. It's a tough thing, because we would like very much to have money go to people trying to get an education, loans, and also grants. But we can't have states not paying attention to how well they're doing. If you have knowledge of a student or doctor, possible doctor, that's having these kind of difficulties, have them reach out to our office, and we will try our best to direct them to where they can get additional help. With that, the next question.
Real quickly, it is fantastic to see so many people have connected into this live telephone town hall with your Congressman, Cliff Bentz. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Also, don't forget to get signed up for the Congressman's very informative e-newsletter, and you can do that during this event by pressing *6. So again, you got a question on your mind, please press *3. And if you'd like to get subscribed to the e-newsletter, which I highly encourage you to do, please press *6. So back to the phones. Klamath Falls, we've got John joining us now. Hello, John. You are live with the Congressman. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was just curious if Oregon was going to try and do redistricting like Texas, but opposite, to try to get rid of Republicans.
Well, Oregon is about as gerrymandered as it can possibly be already. If you look at a map, you'll see that my district, CD2, takes up almost 3/4 of the state. And I think the concept perhaps was to round up most of the Republicans and put them in my district. If you look at the other 5 districts, you'll see that 4 of those 5 districts tie into Portland. And so they basically leavened each district with a part of Portland, making sure that the Democrat numbers were significantly higher than the Republican. There's one other district, and it's Eugene and the coast. And of course, if you put Eugene into a district, you're going to get quite a high number of Democrats, and that's exactly what was done. So if someone wants to gerrymander more, it's a little bit difficult to see exactly how that would be done without reducing the number of Democrats in the other 5 congressional districts. And that, I think, is something that those Democrats would resist. And exactly how you could design something that isn't even more obviously gerrymandered would be a real question. But the truth of it is, I'm hardly the one to be answering the question, because I'm a Republican, and I'm not in the state legislature. And so it's going to be up to the Democrats in the state legislature and the governor to determine if that's what they want to do. It would just seem to me that it's hard. I haven't spent any time trying to figure out how to redraw it. I would redraw. I think it's already been done. So I'm going to guess it's going to stay the way it is, but who knows? Next question.
All right, next up, we've got Ann in Madras joining us. Ann, welcome to the call. You're live with the Congressman. Go ahead with your question. Hello, Ann.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I live in Central Oregon, and I was recently notified by my homeowner's insurance that they are canceling my policy at the end of the current period, which is next month, due to wildfires. And when I reached out to my agent to ask about it, I was told that Farmers is completely pulling out of anything east of the Cascades for homeowners coverage. And I see this as the tip of the iceberg, and I'm wondering if there's something that Congress can do to help us with this, or what your thoughts are on this.
Well, I really, really appreciate the question, and I wish I had a snappy answer to it. I would just say that my staff has handed me some numbers. Are you suggesting they give a call to our Medford office to talk this over? So let me share our Medford office number, 541-776-4646, and then the DC office is 202-225-6730, and you can find these numbers on our webpage. But I want to talk a little bit about. I'm not sure how much help we can give you, but we can. I hope we can. But as these insurance companies pull out, it's because the risk is great in any part of the West. But what's happened because of the fires in LA and other places, they've lost so much money that they don't dare take risk elsewhere. And so that's why you see insurance companies bailing out all over the place. I have had a number of meetings, and we will have more as we try to figure out what to do about this, because we have to figure out how to address this issue. And I want to head something off. There will be people who will say, well, gee, Mr. Bentz, if you would just acknowledge the impact of climate change, then everything would be better. Let me just point something out. The fact that it's getting hotter and drier is, I agree wholeheartedly, and I've said so for years. And what I have done is said we have to figure out how to adapt. Mitigation is great if you can reduce CO2, more power to you. But I'll just tell you right now that that's not what is happening across and around the world, particularly in China. And so, as I've often said, we could reduce our CO2 creation in the United States to zero, and it would not make a perceptible difference. It would not, and that's because the CO2 that's already in the air, plus that which China is adding, and India, is going to continue to manifest in whatever problems that causes. So what I'm trying to say is we have to figure out a way to adapt to hotter and drier. And one of those adaptation things has to be an insurance arrangement that works. I don't pretend to have an answer just yet. I have been talking it over with other people. At one time I thought that if we could drive down the risk by having everybody in the small town I was talking to at the time we were having this conversation was La Pine. And I was meeting with various folks there, and I was saying, okay, let's just go through this town and make sure that every yard, every spare tree, every piece of brush was removed so that we had almost no chance of fire. I'll simply tell you that in and of itself is probably not going to be enough. And I've been told that by various insurance agents that we were going to have something more clever than that. But I can assure you we are working on it, and I'm aware of the problem. And I wish I had a snappy answer. I don't. Next question.
Next up, we've got Lloyd joining us from Bend. Lloyd, you're live with the Congressman. Go ahead with your question, please.
I'm asking, my question for you, Cliff, is what can the GOP do to better communicate the big bill? Because there's so many fallacies out there, and people keep spouting them. What can you guys do to get more communicative with the rest of the, especially Democrats?
Well, thank you so much for the question. When we took off on my road trip week before last and then last week, we focused just on doing exactly what you're talking about, and that meant appearing in different places and talking about the content of the Working Family Tax Cut bill, or the great big beautiful bill, if you will. And there, as you point out, there are some extremely important elements in it. I'm going to keep mentioning different ones as we go through it. For example, it did increase and make permanent the amount of money that you don't have to pay under which you don't have to pay death tax. So 15 million, do I have that right? 15 million per person, 30 million total. And people may say, well, that's an awful lot of money, and it is. But there are ranches and land now and businesses that are worth that kind of money. And so now folks that are worried about losing the family operation to the federal tax don't have to worry about it. I will point out the state of Oregon has its own death tax, which is another question entirely. But it's also a problem. But I'm not there anymore. You'll have to talk to your state folks about that. When it comes to getting other elements known by everybody, we're doing our best to try to take out ads. We're doing our best to put stuff on Facebook. We're doing our best to take the word to various committees. It would be great if our newspapers would step up to that end. When I saw something written by Tina Kotek, Governor Kotek, the other day, I took the time to write up a response, which was printed in a number of different papers. and it summarizes some of these changes and calls them out. And I ask in that response to Governor Kotek, why in the world aren't you talking about some of the most important things in this bill? Whether it's that border security part, whether it's the economic growth and tax relief part, whether it's the small business tax relief part, whether it's the education and fiscal responsibility part, or whether it's the energy and environment part. It mandates, the bill does a number of different Gulf lease sales over the next 15 years. It restores oil and gas and coal leasing on federal lands. It has any number of things in it, like I said, hundreds of things in it, and we'll just keep plugging away trying to let people know more about it. It is the law now, so no longer is it something that people say might happen. It has happened. It's passed. And now the question is, as you point out, and thank you for raising the issue, necessary to try to let people know what's in it. Next question.
So I'd like to take a quick pause from questions to let everybody know that the technology we're using for this live telephone town hall allows us to do poll questions and get your input, you, the constituency. And this is what I'd like you to do. Use your telephone keypad to respond to this question. I will ask the question twice. Do you support the working family tax plan? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. Again, we're looking for your input on this question. Do you support the working family tax plan? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. See, folks are keen in their response. Thank you very much for participating. And another quick reminder, if you have a question you'd like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue, and take a moment right now and press *6 to get yourself subscribed to receive the e-newsletter that the Congressman and his staff put together frequently for you. Again, *3 if you have a question, *6 to get subscribed to receive the e-newsletter. Now, back to the phones we go, and Klamath Falls it is with Linda on the line. Linda, welcome. You are live with the Congressman. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, over the Memorial Day weekend, Kotex had a vote session. Well, people were on vacation. She's now raising our gas taxes, our license, our car tax, everything we voted no for in our last voting session. How is she getting away with this?
Right. So I think what you're talking about is the fact that I think the governor was in Alaska or someplace, Canada, I'm not sure where, while the votes were going on to move the bill through the transportation package through the House. I don't think the bill has been moved through the Senate yet because of the illness of one of the senators, Senator Gorsuch. As far as what's in the bill and why is she supporting it, I haven't paid a huge amount of attention to the bill because I've been focused here in D.C. on issues, but it's my understanding that the gas tax is going to go up, and many of the fees that surround the gas tax are going to go up, and many other things are in the bill. I will just say that there's no doubt our roads need to be paid for. I'll also say that in my conversations with folks across the state who I know are involved in ODOT and whatnot, that there's a huge concern over the challenges that ODOT faces. And I wish that there had been more discussion about how those challenges are going to be met and how ODOT is going to be structured or restructured, as the case may be, so that the problems that it currently faces, which are extremely serious, will be for sure addressed, because I think the people of Oregon are willing to pay for their roads. I just think there's a big concern that ODOT is not up to it, and that the confusion that's going on with long-term projects, with truckers versus cars, with all of the things that are involved in an incredibly complex organization have not been addressed. And as a result, people are going to be unhappy that this bill increases their costs without first assuring everybody that ODOT as an agency has been appropriately its problems have been appropriately addressed, the problems that have led us to this particular situation. And I know these people well. I was involved very, very heavily in many of these things years ago, and the folks at ODOT are great, but the problems they face are serious, and somehow we have to make sure that the people of Oregon know that those problems are being addressed. And so thank you for the question. Before we go to the next question, I just want to mention the doctor had asked if perhaps part of that transition money, that there is $50 billion that's been set up in this bill to help with small rural hospitals transition through some of the changes that are going to be phased in over the next 10 years. And it's an extremely important $50 billion, and I spoke to Dr. Oz about that $50 billion account, if you will. I don't remember any part of it being earmarked for paying tuition for doctors. I do not remember that. But it doesn't mean that something couldn't be in there that in some fashion focuses on educating more people to work in the healthcare field. One of the biggest challenges we face right now is nurses. We don't have enough of them. They do incredibly important work. And because of COVID, many of them retired or just quit and did other stuff. And so how in the world we're going to get more of those nurses back is a real serious question, and perhaps part of that $50 billion will be used for that purpose. Next question.
So real quickly, I'd like to provide the results of the poll question we just asked. And moments ago, we asked you all, do you support the Working Family Tax Plan? And 65% of those that responded said yes, they do support it, while 35% said no. So thank you, everybody, for supplying your input to that question. And our next question comes from an online submittal from Linda, who's wondering, Congressman, will you advocate for individuals to receive vaccines, such as a COVID vaccine, if they desire? Do you support the stance Kennedy is taking with the CDC?
Well, so the first part of the question is, will I advocate for those who want the COVID shot? Of course I will. And to that end, my staff and I spent an hour and a half this afternoon trying to sort through exactly where we stand, or more to the point, my constituents stand when it comes to trying to get that particular vaccine. What we'll be doing is reaching out to the Secretary's office, Secretary Kennedy, to find out what the thinking was when it came to deciding to change the protocol, if you will, to get these kinds of vaccines. It's a complicated thing, but what it amounts to is certain groups were removed from those it was recommended to take the vaccine, and that resulted in a need for the CDC committee, I believe, to issue a means of making those decisions. And that, in turn, because that committee has not yet acted, led to a situation we're now facing, which is that if you want to get a COVID shot, you're probably going to have your doctor tell the pharmacy that you should get it. And that may continue for a couple of weeks until the committee operates to approve of the new groups that have been identified as those who should get the vaccination. And we're trying to figure out exactly how long that's going to take, and exactly what form this approval is going to manifest in. But your question was, will I help people try to get that shot? Of course. The second question had to do with, can you read the last part of that question?
Yes, sir. Do you support the stance Kennedy is taking with the CDC?
I think what that question is trying to get at is the fact that Kennedy fired the head of the CDC. I'll simply say that he's the secretary. He gets to do what he wants. I'm not an expert in knowing. The better way to put it is, I've not researched why he fired her. I'm not researched what the reasons were. I was only peripherally listening to a portion of the Senate hearing where he was explaining that, in his opinion, she had lied to him, and she in turn had said that wasn't the case at all. So obviously a disagreement. I wish these people who had been approved by the Senate weren't going out the door so quickly, but I'm certainly not party to whatever he was thinking as he made that decision. Those kind of questions, I think, should probably be addressed to the secretary. But I'm happy to ask him if somebody calls and says, "Hey, would you please put this question to the secretary?" We'll ask him.
All right, moving back to the phones, we've got Stanley in Klamath Falls on the line with us now. Stanley, you are live with Congressman Bentz. What is your question, sir?
What are we going to do with the wolves that are coming into our country?
You mean wolves as in the wolves that are chewing up our cattle?
Here, our elk, everything.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I want to make sure I was on the right animal. For whatever it's worth, now we have an administration that will act in the event that wolves are, even though listed, putting children in danger, because, as you may know, a wolf that had a collar on over toward Klamath Falls made the mistake of going too close to children at a school bus stop, and the next day that wolf was taken, was shot by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and that was early this year, about 2 or 3 days after the Trump administration took office. So we had been working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife prior to that time, trying to get U.S. Fish to engage in more non-lethal methods of trying to haze the wolf and get rid of the wolf, get the wolf out of there. So I'm very happy this administration is willing to act. The longer-term question is, will we be successful in getting the wolf essentially delisted in all of Oregon? Because, as you know, it's not listed in one part of Oregon, and it is listed in another. That's ridiculous. And we have introduced legislation to have the wolf delisted in all of Oregon, and Washington State's the same way. So our bill asks that Washington be treated the same as Oregon, and the wolf be delisted. If delisted, then we would be able to take more action when the wolf is attacking cattle. I do want to point out that in our working family tax cut bill, we included a increase in the reimbursement to ranchers or others who lose livestock or animals to wolves, and this applies nationwide. But the idea was at least we could get people reimbursed for the market value of the animal taken, and we included in it, if the animal was pregnant at the time it was killed, then you would be reimbursed for the as yet unborn calf. So we at least have something there to help when the wolf attacks our cattle. My hope is that our bill will get passed, and will, because the U.S. Fish and Wildlife actually wants the wolf delisted. It was a judge in a court that said that couldn't happen until the wolf was recovered in all of the states in which it once roamed, believe it or not, including Mexico. And so I don't know what we've got to say about Mexico, but not much when it comes to wolves. And so that ain't going to work. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get some Democrat support in passing our bill to delist the wolf in Oregon and Washington. Next question.
Well, Congressman, that looks like that's all the time we have for questions this evening. As I look at the clock, I want to make sure that we do allow a little bit of time for some closing remarks from you, sir.
Well, the first thing I want to mention is that we'll have another town hall next Wednesday, September 17th, and that town hall will be just like this one, Umatilla, Union, Baker, Gillum, Malheur, Grant, Harney, Lake, Wallowa, Morrow, and Wheeler counties will be involved in that particular town hall. I just want to say that there's been many questions asked about why I'm not having live town halls, and I wrote an editorial that I've sent out explaining why I'm not. And I can tell by the people who are asking me to have town halls that they're far more interested in the spectacle as opposed to in listening to me try to explain and answer the questions that you asked me tonight. And so it's my hope that we'll be able to go back to what I'll call normal town halls sooner rather than later, because I enjoy town halls, but I don't enjoy the yelling and the screaming and the bad language and people engaging in threatening and intimidating behavior. That's not what a town hall is about. You may recall, you probably all heard that my friend Ron Wyden tried to have a town hall 3 weeks ago up in Grants Pass, and 60 or 70 people showed up that were pro-Palestinian, as I understand it, and marched around and yelled and shouted, and he finally had to get up and leave. He gave up and left. And by the way, he right now, as I understand it, has COVID. I'm not sure where he got it, but he does. So you can say a prayer or two for the guy. He's I must say, the town hall meetings are very, very important to me, and that's why we're holding this one. I also want to say thank you for you guys taking the time to listen, because there's a lot going on here. There's a lot that we've done, and this gives me a chance to share all of that with you. And I, of course, want to thank you for taking the time to listen. Also, if you, by some chance, have you're coming back this direction, please contact our office. Let us know. I don't get too many visitors from West Coast. It's a long way. It's expensive to get here. But if you do, we're more than happy to show you around and welcome you here to D.C. There wasn't too many questions asked about President Trump's attempt to bring law and order to D.C. I just want to share with you before I leave that one of the interns that worked here in the building was shot dead about a month and a half ago here in D.C. He was simply walking down the street. It was the saddest thing, and so of course the president wants to head off this kind of bad behavior. I've been here, by the way, a couple of weeks, second week since I got back from district. I've seen 4 folks wearing the fatigues of the guard. They seem to be happy to be here, and I'm happy to see them. And so with that, I'm thanking all of you for being on tonight. Look forward to hearing from you at the next town hall. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Echoing your Congressman's words of thanks, thank you everyone for participating in today's telephone town hall with Congressman Cliff Bentz. If you'd like to stay up to date on the Congressman's work, you can follow him on Facebook, X, and Instagram, the handle @RepBentz. If you'd like to get subscribed to his e-newsletter, at this point in the call, simply stay on the line and leave us your name and email address after the tone. Again, thanks for joining us tonight. We hope you stay healthy and safe and have a great evening. This concludes today's call. Goodbye.